Have you ever considered that the reason you don't like school is not because of you, but because of school itself? Well, my name's Jade and I'm studying a cognitive science degree and I'm really interested in the science of learning. I recently read this book, Why Don't Students Like School? It's written by a cognitive scientist called Willingham, and it's actually written for teachers to help them better understand the science of learning and how to support students. The main takeaway of the book is the author feels like education has failed because teachers and students don't understand enough about how we learn, about how the brain works. Students aren't connected to the metacognition process of why they're learning what they're learning. Teachers don't understand why we're struggling so much. Today I'm going to summarize 3 of my main takeaways for the book, and I really hope it makes you see education in a new way and makes you feel like you can get more motivated and like school more. The first main answer that I got to the question, why don't students like school, seems obvious. Because it's not interesting. There are 2 key factors discussed in making something interesting to students. The first is something called desirable difficulty. We want school to not be too hard and not be too easy. When it's too hard, we give up. We say, you know what, I'm just not good at maths. But when it's too easy, we get bored, we switch off, we're like, why are we even doing this? And it sounds like an easy task, but when you've got a teacher with one set curriculum, 30 students who are all at different levels, one standard examination that everyone has to prepare for, it's just no surprise that the content is too boring and too easy for some people and then a real struggle for others. Just me theorizing, this wasn't said in the book, but something that I can definitely see, or I think needs to happen in future education, is education being more customizable to you and where you are at in your learning journey, because then you can set the difficulty. Imagine if we made more use of online tools or online courses where everyone can learn at their own pace. Just a thought. And secondly, why isn't school interesting? We need to be curious about the subject we're learning. A point made in this book, how do people remember things? We remember things because we think about them more. He has this wonderful phrase, memory is the residue of thought. And this really marries to a lot of principles I've learned about in my degree, like long-term potentiation, which is the idea that the more that you're thinking about one concept, the more that you are strengthening the neural pathways to accessing that content. Literally, the more you're thinking about something, the more that you are training your brain to make it easy to think about that thing. But like, are you really gonna be thinking and mulling over something that you find boring? That no one has even told you why it's interesting? I'm sorry, but schools often do not do this well. They say, you should learn this because it's gonna be on your exam. Not because it's inherently interesting, not because it has incredible value for your daily life, because you can apply it to things that you're seeing, things that you're thinking day to day, but because you need to be tested on it. And I think this is such a failure of the education system, is not focusing on this natural interest and curiosity of people. One of my best friends has ADHD, and I think this is one of the most misunderstood neurodivergences, because they are one of the smartest people ever when they're interested in a topic. When their curiosity is piqued, they can like hyper-focus, they can learn so much because they're thinking all about it. But if they've not been made interested in the topic, they physically cannot learn it. Like, they physically cannot get it in their brain. And so I think it'd be interesting if school had to focus more on the curiosity and the true interest, rather than just learning, understanding content for an exam, where we would be. And obviously some teachers do this, and some teachers put so much effort into this, and they're wonderful. So in summary of the first point, why don't we like school? Because classes can be boring. They aren't desirably difficult for our level, and they aren't piquing our curiosity because we feel like we just have to learn it. On the topic of learning for fun, have you tried Skillshare? I actually don't even know where to begin. I love Skillshare so much. I have taken from their productivity masterclass with Ali to more recently, I've been learning a lot about life drawing, and I did this amazing class on getting over perfectionism and learning how to draw the human form. It even gave me the confidence to go to a real life drawing class in person and test out my skills. Skillshare is an amazing learning community with so many classes on so many different topics. I highly recommend. I love that you get to choose what you want to learn, that you can learn at your own pace, that there are extra class resources so that you can compound your learning if you want to. If you're looking to learn a new skill or pique your curiosity this summer, then the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description will actually get a little free month trial, which is funny because that's the first way that I ever used Skillshare. Thank you, Skillshare. The second reason why students don't like school is the good old fixed mindset. I don't know if you've heard of this idea before. It was popularized by Angela Duckworth. And the idea of a fixed mindset is that you have this predetermined belief that you are naturally good or bad at something. Imagine you keep getting maths questions wrong, and so you say, I am naturally not good at maths. This isn't for me. And rather than struggling more to grapple with the content, you kind of give up because you've given yourself this excuse, oh yeah, I'm just not a maths person. I also think this is deeply linked to representation in fields. Like, imagine if you only ever see white male engineers. Like, it's so much easier to convince yourself that you are not a natural engineer. But the whole idea of a growth mindset is understanding that anyone can be good at something through enough practice, through learning about it in the right way and being curious and putting effort in. Anyone can be good at stuff. You're just not good at it yet. And I really think the school system is problematic here because it rewards grades rather than progress. You learn to be proud of top grades and embarrassed about low ones. And so you start attaching these grades to your sense of identity rather than seeing them as points that you can grow on. And I truly think if we had more of a growth mindset, if we appreciated the learning process more, we would also like school more. And number 3, this point is so interesting. We have come to believe that memorization is useless. Willingham includes this quote by Einstein, which says, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." I can't count the number of times I have said, oh my God, all schools do nowadays is teach you rote memorization of facts that you don't need, like teach us critical thinking schools, come on. But this book argues that memorization is an absolutely necessary precursor to critical thinking. It says, actually, knowledge is more important than imagination because you can only imagine so far as your knowledge goes. I think of this like language. If you don't memorize more vocabulary, then your imagination or the way that you speak, the way you describe things can only go as far as the vocabulary you have. You can't see beyond it because you don't even know that there's more you could imagine. He argues memorization is absolutely essential to skills like synthesis, problem solving, analysis, critical thinking, application. We understand new things in the context of what we already know. I think if we appreciated the value of memorization more or just understood why it's necessary, then we would also enjoy school more. We would see it as giving us this toolkit to eventually think more critically about the world. Also, a really interesting point here is that every student has such different background knowledge and existing factual knowledge when they're coming to school every day based off of their family's income and knowledge and education level. If your family have a greater vocabulary, you probably will too, because there's so much learning that happens not just in the school environment. And one of the failures of education, which leads to more inequality in eventual education outcomes, is not getting students to the same level of factual knowledge really early on. So the more that schools create this base level of everyone having these facts in their head about the world, the more opportunities that everyone has. So what are some things that you can actually take away from this? If your teacher is not making the content desirably difficult for you, then you can do something about that. If it's too hard, you can get yourself up to speed by doing more research, watching more videos, telling them that they're going too fast. Or if it's too easy for you, you can go beyond and you can find extra resources to make it feel more challenging and therefore more satisfying. And if it feels super boring, then I know it shouldn't be up to you, but you can make this thing interesting to yourself. That is such a skill. Elizabeth Phillips has a wonderful video on this in piquing interest and curiosity in a topic which is originally really boring to you. Secondly, if you are saying things like, I am naturally not good at maths, then stop, because that is a fixed mindset and you are only perpetuating that. You are only giving yourself an excuse not to try. It has been proven again and again, hard work equals improvement. So you can do it, you've just got to work for it. And thirdly, if you have a belief that you don't need to memorize anything, that the internet will always be there, so like, why are you even learning facts? Just think about if you never memorized half the words of the English language, how limited your scope of thought, of understanding, of verbalizing would be. There are some things which are useful to have in your head. And now we come to critiques, because I always love to do that for books. Right, so he defends school in a lot of ways and basically says, oh, teachers, like, here's how you can do better to support students. Students, here's what you can do to be better. Rather than looking at the actual school system and thinking, could we change that? The education system needs a lot of reform, in my opinion, so I think he could have critiqued that a bit more. Secondly, something that was just not mentioned in why students don't like school is the pressure of exams, the pressure to succeed, the pressure from peers and parents saying you need to get this certain grade. Are we even doing it for knowledge anymore? Or are we doing it to get a letter on a piece of paper? Are we learning for fun? Or are we learning so we can get a stable job? I would have loved to see a bit more critique into that idea because it definitely impacts learning. And finally, I think there is so much that goes on in the backgrounds of students' lives, which means that when they step into that classroom, they're already at a disadvantage to a lot of other students in that room. And again, that requires like system level change. But I don't think the solution is as simple as just saying, they need to focus on the science of learning. Anyway, as someone who genuinely loves learning and school and education, I really hope this inspires you to, view school in a different way. To remind yourself why you're there, what your goals are, why you're doing it, and how you can make it a better experience for yourself through thinking about these cognitive principles. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm sending you so much love. And my casual magic for today is this little tea. It's 30 degrees outside, but I've always got to have my tea. Bye guys.